Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Berger-Javallo. Next up, Representative Hoxha.
Thank you, Chair Blumenthal, and welcome, Madam Secretary. Congratulations on your new position. First question that I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but definitely falls within the purview of your office. What do you think about the state funding photo IDs for all registered voters? I put in a bill to do just that. I know that other people have done so in the past. What are your thoughts on that? The cost probably wouldn't be too much, and it would really kind of just quell all doubts and suspicions about any improprieties that may or may not happen during in-person voting. And it would just be kind of a good tool or a good service for voters to be given a photo ID, and it also just makes the process a lot easier for the poll workers, as opposed to having to go through alternative channels of identifying who the voter is, and having to resort to affidavits and provisional ballots and things like that. So what are your thoughts on passing legislation, on our legislative body, passing legislation to make that a possibility for voters? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I agree with quelling doubts for those who have them. Just anecdotally, like I said, last week I was with the National Association of Secretaries of the State, and many of those states, and there were 33 secretaries present. Many of those states do have very strict photo ID laws, but the main conversation that was held around the table of every party, secretaries that are new, like myself, secretaries who have been there at 20 years, is that the concern that no matter what actually exists, there seems to be this growing doubt out there that is not based in fact, but is just based in perception. So I'm not sure one follows the other. What I would say is I don't want to take time away. That is not the focus of any of these bills, although it might fall into the role of the secretary if a law were adopted. But we had several public hearings over the last 2 years on the topic. I would be happy to send you my clips, which clearly outline my thoughts, but it's just not the focus of any of the bills in front of us today.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I certainly appreciate it. So if not for, if the portion of my question that dealt with quelling doubts is not something that you feel is appropriate right now to discuss, what about the aspect of streamlining the process or making it easier for the poll workers by basically giving everybody a photo ID? What do you have to say to that, given the fact that right now, like we discussed before, there are many instances where people don't have photo identification and have to use other means of identifying themselves, and then that just muddies and complicates the whole process. It, if nothing else, makes it longer. So what about that aspect of photo ID?
I'm not sure how to quantify many, but I've not ever actually heard an election worker bring that concern to me. So if it might be a good question to ask ROVAC or the Town Clerks Association, well, I guess ROVAC, when they testified today, because the relevant portion would be, do we think that some sort of photo ID would make early voting easier or more difficult to implement, on one side or the other. And I've not heard election workers talk about that as being a concern. I think the staffing that is proposed in all three of the early voting bills would allow for sort of a quick it would allow, I think they're recommending 3 or 4 people per poll location, so per town. So I think that would be enough staff for many places. And then if the cities want to apply for additional locations, I would assume they would base it on the number of voters they expected. But it might be a good question to ask Rovac if they thought that staffing needed to be adjusted, or alternatively, if some sort of photo ID would help alleviate any crush based on the number of staffing that have been allocated in the bills.
Thank you for your response. I appreciate it. Just to speak from my personal experience, I have heard from poll workers in my city and in my district talk about that issue specifically, how it always complicates things when people can't produce photo identification. Not talking about, not even talking about the legitimacy of other forms of identification, just that photo identification is the preferred method for those poll workers that I spoke to be able to do their job. So yeah, thank you very much for your response. And yeah, I may ask that question to Rovac. Thank you.
And thank you. I'll be happy. I'll reach out. So it looks like 78th district. I'll certainly reach out to the 2 registrars and get any input they have. As I said, I'm always happy to hear about ways that we can make this workable. So if they have serious concern, we'll find a way to address it.
Well, thank you very much. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.